When you want to talk to a government official, you kind of have to jump through some hoops and you have to go through a lot of back and forth before you actually get the okay and you sit down and record with them. And so that's what was happening with this guest. I had to go through a whole bunch of hoops, and I'm not complaining or anything, I completely understand, but I wanted to bring you guys this episode a lot sooner, but because I had to get all these approvals, it came out now. But whatever, better late than never, so I'm glad that I finally got to sit down with my next guest. But I want to give a special shout out to AJ, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to sit down with my next guest, and she was really just such a wonderful help. So thank you, AJ. And I told you guys, I gave you a little tease that it's about drugs, and no, I don't think it's about the drugs that you guys may be thinking about, or maybe the topics you may be thinking about, but it is about the war on drugs. And I've always had this interest because you have such a split when it comes to this issue. You have people who say that the war on drugs is futile and that people will do drugs no matter what. They'll find their way. When there's a will, there's a way. But then you also have the other side that are so heavy into fighting the war on drugs because they want to protect people, they want to make sure people don't hurt themselves, and they also want to educate people. So I wanted to get kind of in-depth analysis of the whole war on drugs from someone who's really in the middle of it, someone who sees it day to day. And so that's what my next guest does, and I hope you guys enjoy. It's been some back and forth, and it took some time to finally sit down, and you should have seen, I love to paint pictures for you guys. The room that they put me in, I don't know if you guys have seen House of Cards or any type of military movie, but the situation rooms with the long tables and the pop-up outlets. Trust me, it's real. It really does happen. They have all those things. But now, I'm in an even smaller situation room, I'm going to call it, and it's more intimate. But my next guest, I'm so glad he's here. And like I said, it was after a bunch of back and forth, but I'm so glad to have him here. Mr. A.D. Wright, right? You want to go as Adolphus? Is Adolphus?
Well, the birth name is Adolphus, but
the birth name is Adolphus.
Friends and family call me A.D. because A.D. a lot of people couldn't get Adolphus right as a child. So.
I was going to say Adolphus. You must have had a lot of nicknames.
Absolutely.
So A.D.'s a good one, Adolphus.
Absolutely.
If you can introduce yourself, if that's okay.
Certainly. Well, first of all, Nico, thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime.
Great, glad to be here with you this morning. I'm A.D. Wright. I'm the special agent in charge here at the Drug Enforcement Administration's Miami Field Division. Been doing this for a while now. I'm going to age myself, I guess. I've been doing it for over 32 years now, but as the special agent in charge, I got back here and took this job over in 2015.
2015, mm-hmm. Okay. So you said that you're in the Miami division.
Right.
So what area does that kind of cover, and what is the difference between, let's say, Miami division and another division?
Well, the Miami Field Division covers the entire state of Florida.
Okay.
From Pensacola to Key West. 4 district offices and 7-8 resident offices throughout the state. And so it's a big state, a lot of territory to cover, but I think we do a fairly good job here.
Mm-hmm. And so kind of how do you divvy up the resources? This is the main station? Is this the kind of where people come to meet for everything? Or?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, we have 21 field divisions throughout the country. We located also overseas. So the region of the country is broken up, different field divisions. Miami just happened to be one of them. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we cover the entire state. So
okay. And so, Drug Enforcement Agency, Administration. I want to talk about that a little bit, because what makes the Drug Enforcement Administration? What do they entail in terms of what they kind of monitor? Because, for example, ATF, which is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Why isn't alcohol, for example, included in the DEA?
Well, for the DEA, we are responsible for enforcing the federal drug laws of this country. The Controlled Substances Act. That's our one commodity that we deal in, and we've been doing that for a while now throughout the existence of this agency. It's an important mission. It's our only mission, and unlike our brother agencies in the FBI, who cover a whole gamut of federal crimes, we just stick with the drugs, and that's what we enforce.
But it's only federal.
Federal drugs.
Federal drugs, right.
Now, we do work with our state and local partners.
And that's what I wanted to ask about that as well. Kind of how, when you guys work with local agencies, kind of how does that work?
Well, depending on the nature of the investigation, sometimes we do work a lot with our state and local partners. And if the criteria to keep a case safe, so not to expose the federal side of it. Sometimes we will ask our partners to take it state. So, because if it's a long-term investigation, we got other targets out there. If we have low-level targets, we'll just let them go state to keep the investigation viable, and then later on, we will take the bigger fish, I guess, on the federal level.
So I want to talk more about kind of that in a second, but I want to come back to the whole kind of what the DEA kind of covers, and you said it's the controlled substance.
Exactly.
Can you just elaborate that on a little more, because I'm a little confused. I'm not gonna lie about that.
Well, basically, drugs, they are scheduled by the government. Schedule 1 through Schedule 5.
So that's what I'm sorry to interrupt. I also wanted to know about the scheduling. Is 1 the worst? 5 is, or 1 is the most
considered that's more, you can become addictive to it.
Okay.
Per se.
Okay.
And then it goes down the line. The Schedule 5 with low level stuff, probably prescription drugs on the lower level. For example, cocaine is Schedule 2.
Okay.
It's addictive. And so it's
not
the way
Schedule 1. Wow.
It's not Schedule 1, and I don't do the scheduling. I don't know why, but I guess this scenario, what can become addictive, they want to put in the Schedule 1 category, and so on. So now marijuana is Schedule 1.
Marijuana is Schedule 1.
Marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug. So,
wow.
But I guess they figure it's addictive.
Okay.
And that's why they schedule it as such. Now, there's been some argument among the politicians to reclassify, to reschedule it, but that's for the politicians to decide. As long as it stay in the category we're in, we will enforce those laws.
So that must be kind of that's a touchy subject, obviously, the marijuana and everything, because you look at Colorado and it's state-wise legal there. Right. So the DEA, even if you're in Colorado, can still stop someone because it's still federally illegal, correct?
It's still a federal illegal drug. And so you run into conflicts there sometimes with it being on the state level, because they made it legal out there, but you still got the federal side of this equation, and so sometimes you're going to have that conflict there. But as long as this is a federal and as long as it's scheduled, we have a responsibility in DEA to enforce those laws.
So, but what, for example, if they get money from a legal tender or something like that, they can't pay it to a federal bank, for example, or something?
Well, probably not, because the money is ill-gotten from the sale of marijuana.
Right.
The chances are we will find a way to try to confiscate those funds because it's illegal funds, as far as the way we see it.
So what is their recourse?
For the persons out there buying?
Yeah, for example, the I don't know what they're called, the dispensaries, is that what the dispensaries, if they were to get money, for example, on a legal purchase, what is their option with their money? Do they still have to put it in taxes? And
well, you hope they would. I think that's why they did it, because to get the revenue out there in the state.
Right.
Well, what was so short-sighted about this whole scenario, about this whole argument, are the social consequences that comes behind that. I think when a state did that, when the state, for example, Colorado, they looked at the amount of money which could be made. Okay, that's a fair argument to make. But what comes behind that is what they didn't look at. The social consequences. The medical costs that may be involved with someone who smoked marijuana all day and go plow into a ditch with their car.
Right.
People got to pay for that. There's a cost involved in that. If someone smoking marijuana and go out and injure someone, there's a cost for that. That's the kind of stuff they didn't look at. It was short-sighted. They looked at the revenue and they didn't look at the other thing. And I think that's going to come back to catch up with them.
Yeah, they just looked at the money. You're saying kind of short-term rather than, like you're saying, socioeconomic terms in terms of the long term.
Absolutely.
And for example, here in the state of Florida, where now it's becoming legal in terms of medically, what other challenges does that pose then? Because if it's medically legal, you have a license for it, but even if you're stopped federally, you still have a problem?
Well, see, that's the thing. When we talk about marijuana, okay, and this is what people need to understand. If you're sitting at home smoking a marijuana cigarette, I can guarantee you, I would guarantee you, you will have no worries about the DEA crashing in your door to take you to jail. Now, if you in your home and you got 500 pounds of marijuana, chances are you're going to get a knock at your door.
Yeah.
Because either you got a serious drug problem and you need to get to rehab real quick if you're saying 500 pounds for medical use. That's distribution.
Correct.
And that's a difference there. If you're trying to distribute it to make money, that's illegal. Okay, now, like I said, if you're sitting there, relaxing, listening to Bob Marley music, smoking a marijuana cigarette, you have no worries from the DEA. I can guarantee you that.
It's more, you guys are looking more for the big people.
The distribution.
Yeah, the distribution aspect of it. So, what is the drug that? Because I was reading the 2016 drug assessment of the DEA that they posted out. It's like a 194-page document. I didn't read all of it, but I read some important things, and they were saying that heroin is skyrocketing in terms of epidemically, and I was just curious, kind of, what is Florida? Because I know heroin, for example, is the Northeast. They have a really big problem in the Northeast. But I was kind of curious, what is Florida's main drug problem right now?
Well, we are seeing an explosion and a rise of heroin here, and I think a lot of that had to do, if you remember back, we had a lot of the pill mills here in Florida, and when that became a problem, we attacked that problem. We shut a lot of those down, and that was a lot of the Oxycontin and things of that nature. Well, in doing that, we kind of knew when we did that, heroin will probably make a reemergence here in this state, and that's exactly what happened. When we shut down the pill mills, the heroin came back, and now we got the synthetic heroin, the fentanyl, which is dangerous. And if I can get anything out of talking to you today and your listeners, people got to educate themselves.
Yes, sir.
That's
what the point of this is. Yes,
this
sir.
is serious. What we're dealing with now, it's an epidemic, and you see around the country, not only in Florida but just around the country. Period. People are dying from this fentanyl. And we got to get the message out. This is serious.
Yes, sir. And so for someone who may know someone who might be doing these kind of drugs, there are obviously symptoms, and there are ways that you could kind of see, hey, you know, my loved one is doing this. Can you tell me maybe some of like the signs of someone who's on fentanyl or some
Well, it's not so
symptoms?
much the fentanyl, because if you're on fentanyl, chances are you gonna be in some serious danger right away.
Okay.
It's the heroin. If you know your loved ones are on drugs, and I'm gonna go with heroin, because the heroin is being mixed with the fentanyl, and the problem is a lot of folks are ingesting this stuff and don't know what they're taking, and this is the problem. You have these drug dealers out here, these traffickers who are selling this stuff. They don't care. They could care. All they want is the money. They could care less about the social consequences of their client per se. But if your loved one is having a drug, you got to get them in. You know, we will never be able to arrest ourselves out of the problem we're in right now. So let me just say that off the bat. Arrest, we will always do enforcement. That's important. But there's other things we got to mix into this equation to make this work. When we're talking about treatment, we're talking about education,
Yes,
and we're talking about prevention. All these things have to come together to get ahead of this curve. And that's what's important. That's what we got to look at now as we move forward.
So that's where a lot of people wonder about that whole argument about making, you know, they say, oh, well, wouldn't it be better if drugs were legal? And there's obviously pros and cons to that argument.
Right.
And the major con that I see of if you were to make drugs legal is obviously you make it accessible to everybody. And then people's arguments to that is that, well, at least it's more regulated. And I just don't understand how people can say that that is okay, because you're basically saying, hey, it's okay for you to do heroin as long as it's regulated, you know, and that's just an argument I don't see how it's apples and oranges. In my
And that's
opinion.
a perfect argument.
Yeah.
That's an outstanding argument, because it should not be regulated to the point where everyone could do it.
Right.
Again, there's consequences behind those actions, you know, and who's going to regulate someone shooting heroin? You can't do that. You know, that's insane. The argument with marijuana, sure, you're going to always have that argument. It's a harmless drug. Well, harmless for who?
For who, exactly.
As I mentioned to you, if you get, the argument I use all the time, if you got a kid who's riding on a school bus, and you know that bus driver has been smoking marijuana all night, would you allow your kid to get on that bus?
Hell no.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, hell no.
Who would do that, right? So that's what you're dealing with here.
And so also, so people, and you alluded to it perfectly, people think drugs are harmless. And people think, oh, if I could do this, you know, they don't see the consequences. And I think that's what's the most important thing about federal agencies, for example, the DEA. People say, oh, shut down the DEA. What do? They do nothing. They're never going to stop drugs, right? Drugs are always going to be there. But I think it's what the DEA does in terms of their education and their outreach that makes their programs important.
Right. And that is an important part of what we do in the DEA. Now, the argument, the shutting down of DEA and the war on drugs is just a wasted effort. I don't agree with that. You know, if we can save a life, then it was worth the effort. You know, sure, there's a generation we may have lost to drugs. I get that, but there's a generation coming behind us that we better be prepared to protect, and that's what we do here each and every day. So I don't see it as a useless effort what we do out there. You're gonna always have the argument, like I said, with marijuana, and people talk about alcohol. Well, that's been regulated. Well, you drink too much alcohol, then there's a consequence behind drinking too much alcohol. as they as a consequence of smoking too much marijuana.
Of course.
It's the same thing. They both kill brain cells.
And a lot of people are linking the kind of this marijuana era to the Prohibition era. How they're saying how, in the beginning, alcohol was shut down because of how problematic it was to the country, and kind of that's what is happening now with marijuana. But I think another thing that pushes marijuana into the limelight is the fact that you were saying is the economic value of it, and how people just see the short term of the money, and then they see these superstars and these rappers and everybody who's smoking, and they think it's cool, and it's becoming kind of mainstream.
Well, yeah, and that's the danger of it because, for me and many of my colleagues, I know we have teenage sons out there, and they can emulate that, and they see that kind of stuff and think it's glamorous. Just like when people saw many years ago, you probably too young to remember the Joe Cool commercial with the camera.
The
cigarettes
of the
and people thought that was cool, and they started smoking. But now you look at the consequences of all that many years of smoking. People dying of cancer. There are consequences behind these actions, and that's what I try to get out there, the message to these young kids. Sure, it might seem glamorous now, but sooner or later, you're going to get wrapped up in this game, and you're going to get a knock at your door. It's going to be people like myself coming in to come talk to you. That's what you got to deal with.
So I want to kind of switch it up because I was reading about TCOs, the transnational criminal organizations.
Exactly.
And how they were talking about how Colombia and Mexico are huge TCOs, and how there are gangs really in our streets who are really pushing those TCOs as well. I was just curious because I'm not familiar with gangs or anything like that. Kind of, what are some of the gangs that are pushing the drugs and kind of propelling that culture?
Well, we will always have gangs like MS-13.
Okay.
And I don't know the proper terminology, but I know MS-13 is one of the gangs from Latin America. The Latin Kings are out there. We had a big case with them not too long ago.
Are those the two? I'm sorry to interrupt.
They're not the only two.
Okay, I was going to say, are
those
those the two most prominent?
Not prominent. I would say Sinaloa Cartel.
Oh, okay.
That's the one that Chapo Guzman ran for many years and finally got him out. But when you take out one, someone else going to reemerge. Right. So with the arrest of Chapo Guzman, it didn't make the Sinaloa Cartel dissipate. Someone just probably will step up to lead that charge.
But it's a blow to them, of course.
It's a blow, absolutely.
Of course,
no doubt it's a blow. For however small that may be, and then someone else will reemerge, and we will still be there to continue to battle the Sinaloa Cartel. You got the gangs down in still in Colombia, not like we had back in the day with Medellin and Cali, things of that nature, the Pablo Escobar of the world. Right. But there are people still down there who have stepped into those roles to continue to put drugs and cocaine into this country. And so we see it each and every day. Now, what happens a lot of times with those major that's who we go after, by the way, the TCOs. That's why I say if you sit in your home smoking marijuana, no worries for me. Because we focus on the people.
You want to know who sent you that cigarette.
Absolutely. Right? That's what we're looking at. Absolutely.
So I'm sorry if you could continue, please. About so what is kind of being done to battle these cartels in terms of and how is it that, I mean, I know they have a network of mules and everything. Of how do they get so much product into our country?
Well, this is the thing. When you think about a country like Colombia, and that's probably one of the biggest commodities they have down there with the cocaine. That's corruption, no doubt about it, and it's a big problem in a lot of the Latin American countries. Now, where we are fortunate in the DEA, we got great relationship with our foreign counterparts in different countries around the world, and that's a big part of it. Joining the ranks and working hand in hand with our foreign counterparts to try to battle this problem. Now, and it's tough because like I said, the corruption does exist, and these guys are able to get stuff on these cargo vessels. And when you think about all the water that's around this state, that's a lot of ocean, and stuff will get through. There's no doubt about it.
So a lot of it is maritime?
A lot of it is maritime.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You don't remember these days of the cocaine cowboys back in the early 80s.
I've heard stories.
When, cocaine was just falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
It was a lot of aircrafts involved there. And that stuff still goes on too. Not so much the airdrops back in the day, but planes coming in, landing, offloading, that kind of stuff. But a lot of what we're seeing now is the maritime still. Guys coming from Colombia, taking it to Haiti, from Haiti trying to make it over to the Florida here, and so we see a lot of that stuff going on. One of our biggest operations, of course, is in Tampa, Operation Panax, one of the big ones we have out there, and they do this stuff daily, the maritime operation.
So you bring up the Cocaine Cowboys and how, we kind of buckled down in terms of shutting that down. And I was reading how cocaine usage is actually on the decline, but it's making a spark back up now that they're mixing it with other drugs. But I was just curious, what worked for cocaine and what can we do to maybe implement it towards heroin?
Well, what happened recently and what has happened down in Colombia, they used to do the aerial spraying in Colombia, and they've stopped that. For whatever reasons, the government of Colombia stopped a lot of the aerial spraying. So the Colombian traffickers have been producing coca like crazy. I mean, the production and the metric ton, they've exceeded from 3 years ago. I mean, it's at levels now we hadn't seen in a while. So a lot of that stuff that's in Colombia starting to make its way here to South Florida again and other parts of the country. So the production has increased in Colombia, and so we've seen the spike. We've certainly seen the spike here in Florida again.
Mm-hmm. And by area spraying, you mean like surveilling areas?
Well, no, the eradication.
Oh, okay.
For aerial.
Actually, okay. Eradicating it.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah. So what is kind of the defense mechanism? Because I'm sure a lot of agents, when they go out and they go and they get these heroin busts and things like that. I mean, that's a dangerous game. And you said you're going after big, huge distributors. I know you guys can't go into super detail of like investigation and things like that, but what are some tactics that you guys kind of use? You said already you guys work with local agencies and with national agencies as well.
Yeah, with the federal agencies we're partners with. But again, when we're talking about the source countries, the biggest component is working with those foreign officials in country. That's where it all starts. And there's I don't want to get into the techniques of what we use.
Yes, sir.
There's no need to do that. Mm-hmm. But, working hand in hand with those guys and what they're able to do in their country. And it's tough for them because, they live there among the traffickers. Here in the States, we got it pretty easy. We can move around a lot more easier than our foreign counterparts. So, I commend them for what they do each and every day because it is truly dangerous living among the trafficking organizations in the source countries.
I can't even imagine. I mean, you hear all the time about Juarez, and how there's beheadings and things like that. That's like I said, it's a dangerous game, and that's why I thank you guys all the time for doing the service and stuff because I'm not brave enough to do it. So I'm glad there's someone who is. And I was just curious because Breaking Bad, for example, I don't know if you watch the show. Mm-hmm. There was a DEA agent character in the show. Right. And obviously it's about his brother, spoiler alert, who cooks meth and things like that. And I was just curious if, this is just a personal question, if you guys had like any increase of agents because of that, or if how true is that role?
How
much of it is Hollywood? Yeah. Oh, okay.
No, the role's pretty true.
Okay.
Because you had, I believe it was a teacher.
Correct. Yes.
Started off as a teacher and had cancer. And needed to find a way to make money.
So we have a real Breaking Bad fan.
This avenue to make money.
Yes, sir.
And he just got so wrapped up in the game that he really became really big in the production of this meth. But there was a social consequence behind the making of this meth. Hell, he got his brother-in-law killed. So at the end of the episode. Mm-hmm. So these are the things that when you get wrapped up in this game, and the message I tell a lot of kids. If you're going to play the game, then you better know the rules, okay? And what I mean by that, if you think you're going to get out there to become this big drug dealer, two things going to happen. One, either your rival's going to knock you off and kill you, or two, you're going to end up in prison. Mm-hmm. Those are the only two options here. Very rarely do people make it out of this game. You look at someone like Pablo Escobar. I think he was on Forbes at one time as one of the richest men in the world. He died on a gutter, having all that money. This game doesn't last long. Mm-hmm. There's only two options here, and I just laid them out to you. Either you're gonna get killed off by your rivals, or you're gonna end up in prison. Mm-hmm. Those are the options.
Mm-hmm. And so, what are the reformation efforts that are being done? For example, if let's say someone is arrested for being a drug abuser or being a drug peddler. Because, for example, a lot of people argue that in the prison system that there's not a good rehabilitation process, and instead of being punitive because we punish people when we put them in prison, that we should reform.
And I agree with that. What I laid out earlier, when I told you we would never arrest ourselves out of this problem, those other areas that we need to concentrate on: the prevention, the treatment, and the education. Those things got to go hand in hand, even with those in prison, to get them the treatment they may need while they're inside, to educate them while they're inside. So when they come out, they become productive citizens and not go back into that world. That's what we're hoping for. And again, we can't just keep locking up folks and think this thing is going to break the cycle. It will not. As long as there's money to be made in the drug business, people will do it. And that's unfortunate. This country has an insatiable appetite with drugs. We got to be honest with ourselves about that. You know, a lot of people, we didn't, and you hear a lot of the source countries tell us, if y'all didn't digest it so much, we wouldn't have this problem. Well, there's some truth to that. But
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. That's what it boils down to. And unfortunately, the U.S. has this insatiable appetite with drugs. And, you know, that keeps us doing what we do each and every day.
Of course, yeah. And like I said, thank you again for doing that. I kind of want to switch gears here. I want to get more to know about AD.
Okay. All right.
And I want to know more about you, man. So how did you become here? You said you came here and you became the special agent in charge in 2015.
Well,
but you've been doing this for 32 years.
Yes, man.
So
it doesn't seem like it.
I mean, I bet, yes.
Look, I make no qualms about it. I think I got lucky when I had the opportunity to come on this job. Coming out of college, I came straight to this job, and I gotta be honest, back then I didn't even know DEA existed. Didn't have no idea about DEA. I knew I was gonna do law enforcement. There was no doubt I wanted to do something in law enforcement. I always thought it'd be the FBI. I don't say that too loud. I thought it would be the FBI, but getting ready to graduate, one of my good friends showed me an article about this new agency called the DEA. So, you know, it was in a magazine. I did my first crime. I wasn't supposed to tear the thing out of the library magazine, but I tore it out, put it in my pocket, and I had a little 3x5 card. I filled it out, sent it away, and a couple of months later, I got a call from a recruiter from the DEA, and that's how this journey began. And I started off here in Miami when I first came on board, and to have make the circuits to different cities and things I had to go to end up here, where it all began. I couldn't ask for a better script.
Right, you started here, now you're back here.
That's the SAC.
The SAC, yeah, the special agent in charge. That's amazing. That's incredible. So it's kind of, you said it's lucky, but I mean, you had a friend tell you about it. But what made you just like, you know what, the DEA sounds cool. I like it.
You know, at the time it didn't sound cool. I didn't know anything about it. I just filled out the little 3x5 card.
And then you got the recruiter from.
And he called me and told me, I guess he sold me on what this agency was all about. And they invited me to come in for an interview. And the rest is history, so they say. And, you know, I've been doing it ever since. And no regrets. It's been a phenomenal career. And I'm glad I chose this route.
So what is the thing you've learned the most in that time?
Well, the thing I've learned the most, everything goes in cycles. When it comes to this drug game. I remember when I first got down here in Miami, right after the heyday of the cocaine cowboys and what we were doing here in the 80s. And that kind of dissipated, and then you saw the explosion of crack. That came on board. And then you saw some of the heroin come on board. And then the pill mills. And now we getting back into the cocaine.
The cocaine, yeah.
It goes in cycles. It ebbs and flows. And but you know what? I think what I've learned more than anything is that the people of the DEA, the dedication that we have in doing this mission, that's something that I'm very proud of. That you know, we know what we're up against, but each and every day folks come through these buildings here and are committed to serving this country and doing the best job that they can. That's what I'm most proud of.
And a lot of times, I mean, you know, you said you had a son, and what is it? Because a lot of times, with the family aspect, I'm trying to get into the family aspect. Some of the agents have to, you know, be undercover. They have to keep things hidden from their partner and things like that. How do you kind of handle that, and how do you kind of balance both of the role of the DEA agent, but kind of being also, you know, a person at home?
Well, it's tough. It could be tough, and a lot of that goes in with the agents because you have to relocate a lot of times, and I've certainly had my share of relocations, like my colleagues here as well. And that's tough on families sometimes when you have to go from city to city. The undercover stuff, I ain't gonna lie to you, that was the best part of the job. You know, because you get to play a role outside of who you are. and you're out there with the bad guys, and you're playing this role, but you have to separate that. When that mission is over, you can't take that home. You got to cut that off. And I think for me and a lot of my colleagues, we were able to do that. Nothing that was long term in a lot of the undercover stuff we do, not like the Donnie Brasco type situation.
Right.
We were never embedded for that long. Now we had some agents who have done that.
Really.
And you got to be careful, because when you embedded that long with that organization or a bad guy, you lose focus.
Of course, I can imagine. Yeah.
And so you have to be careful there. And a lot of times, for me personally, I've done a lot of undercover, but I was never embedded for that long, where I took on that role forever.
Because the scariest thing is that line between you and your actual self and the character you're playing in terms of the undercover, that line kind of gets blurred, doesn't it?
It can. If you're not careful, it can get blurred, because when you're in the undercover role, you are asked to do certain things that you can't cross. And you better be able to think on your feet real fast to get out of a situation, because they will test you. Because again, you're playing a role of somebody that you're not in the real world. And so you have to be careful and make sure that you don't cross a certain line doing undercover type work.
How are you not sweating bullets all the time when you're undercover? You're around this environment. I can't imagine. Like me, just talking to you now, I'm nervous. I just got nervous talking about it.
Well, one thing, you're never out there by yourself.
Okay.
In an undercover role, you're always going to have your surveillance team out there, your extraction team per se, if something should go bad. So I knew in my mind that they were always there. Okay, and but you put yourself in a situation where you don't get compromised. You have an escape plan. Any undercover role I ever done, the first place I was looking for, how do I get out of here if something should go bad? That was the first thing on my mind. What's my escape plan? And again, I knew I always had my surveillance team with me, and you hope that the equipment you was wearing, whatever you may have been doing that day, was working, but there's visual cues and things of that nature that you tell your team, if you're not out by a certain amount of time, send someone in.
Right.
Because it might not be going the way you want it to go. And but so you definitely have cues out there, and you have a game plan. You never go in blind, and that's the thing about undercover work. And so,
do you have? I don't want to delve deep too much into it, but do you have one scary moment of undercover work? Or
well, for me, early on, doing undercover, I didn't speak Spanish. And so I was doing a operation, and I go into this house. It was 7 Colombians, no one speaking English. So I'm in my mind, they could have been saying, "Okay, we just gonna rob him." Okay, I don't know. I didn't speak the language, but that had to be the hardest moment of doing undercover work. And then, I've been in several shootouts on this job, and those was pretty hairy as well. But I wasn't undercover. It's just that when you talking about taking someone's freedom away, and there's going to be that one day they didn't want to go to jail, and unfortunately I ran into that situation out there as well. So
wow, that's commendable to you, because like I said, I don't have the backbone for that. That's
You'd be surprised.
Walking in, no, I'm telling you, I know. I think I know myself pretty well. As soon as if I didn't speak a lick of Spanish and I walk in and there's 7 Colombians and you're telling me about all these cartels and everything, surveillance team, come now, please come now.
But in that situation, even though I didn't speak the language, we were there to do a deal. They had a product, I had the money, and so that's an international language right there. But we didn't speak that language, but the deal went well. Despite I'm not understanding the language, we were able to get the deal done, and we all went to jail.
Well, then, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Yeah. So you say that there's a lot of transferring in terms of relocating. Because you said you started here, but it took you a while to come back here. So where were some places that you went to, and kind of what's like the process of how long do you usually stay for?
Well, depends on. Well, when you first come on board, they make you sign this mobility agreement. They make you sign like 4 or 5 of them just in case they lose one. They always have this over your head. Remember, you signed this, right? Yeah. And so that's the thing. You got a mobility agreement, and it's for the needs of the agency, and that's what the language, the standard language they tell you, the needs of the agency. And so if they see they need to move you to a certain location, you have to move. You sign the agreement. And for me, I started in Miami, and I was fortunate enough to go overseas. I was over in the Bahamas, which was great.
Wow.
I loved it so much I brought back a wife. That's how much I love the Bahamas. So and from the Bahamas, they had to do my headquarters rotation because when you get promoted, that's another criteria. You got to do headquarters. Mm-hmm. So you had to do headquarters. And then I ended up in Texas, which was also great. San Antonio. Loved that city. It was beautiful. And from San Antonio, was able to make it back here. So that's been my journey.
Wow. Okay. So nice little circle. Yeah.
Very much.
Wow. Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. And so when in terms of, I guess when it comes to hiring with the process of a DEA agent, how does that work?
Well, what happens? We have recruitment seminars, and we have a recruiter that goes to different colleges and things of that nature to get the word out about the DEA and see if folks may be interested. If people apply, we bring them in for an orientation, tell them a little bit more about DEA, and sometimes we lose folks right then because when they realize they have to carry a gun or a badge, this ain't for me. Mm-hmm. But if folks want to continue with the process, it's unfortunate. It's not a speedy process. So let me just say that right now. It takes a while because a lot of the background stuff that has to get in place for folks to come on board to make sure with the background investigation. But once that's done and you can pass all that stuff, you pass the written exams, the physical exams, before we send you off to the academy. If you pass all that stuff, then we offer the job. You're still interested, you come on board, we send you to the academy, and that's when the fun begins.
Awesome, yeah. So you're the man in charge, right? This is going to be, I think, the last question. You're the man in charge. If you could give advice to someone who's trying to be a DEA agent, what are some ways that they can prepare themselves to be a great agent? Set themselves apart from the good agents and become a great agent?
Well, having the commitment to serve, first of all. Realizing that, being a federal employee, you're never going to be super rich. But you're going to have the opportunity to serve your community. And I think that's more than anything the dedication that one would need to be a great agent, having the willingness and the commitment to serve. And that's what it boils down to. I mean, this is a vital mission that we do. It's an important mission. And like I said, we only deal with one commodity, and that's the drugs, enforcing the federal drug laws of this country. And I think that's an important mission to have. I like to think that we are saving lives each and every day. But being committed, and I can't tell you what will separate a good agent from a great agent, but I know if someone is dedicated to the mission and come in and do it each and every day, don't worry about watching the clock. Sometimes I sit in this office and when I look up, it's 6, 7 o'clock at night. Where did the time go? But you're so wrapped up in what you're doing, you forget about time sometimes. And that's what makes it worthwhile. And just the people of this agency, the commitment that they have. I've seen it now for over 30 years, and the love that they have doing this job makes it worthwhile.
Wow. Yes, it does. And again, I'd like to thank you and all of the agents of the DEA and all of the forces that help put a stop to not only drugs but just any type of evil, really, because that's what this is. You're selling something that harms someone's body, their temple. Absolutely. So I want to say thank you, and thank you again, Mr. Wright, for taking time out of your busy day. I know you have a super busy schedule, so thank you for this.
Thank you, and I appreciate you for getting the word out there for us. So
thank you.
Okay.
Since it's such a hot topic, it's one that you kind of hear more sides of one side than the other because, like I said, since it's such a hot topic, the people who are directly involved with, for example, the DEA or a part of the government kind of have to not censor themselves, but I guess censor themselves because they can't lose their jobs. And, it's hard to talk to someone who's getting paid to fight drugs and ask them, well, why is it important? Why is it necessary? When so many people think it's not necessary. But, you got to understand that's their livelihood and that's what they chose to do. And if you learned anything from this episode, I think the biggest thing is that they are dedicated men and women who are really trying to help people. And what they're trying to do, the DEA I'm talking about, is they're trying to educate people. And I think that's what we need to look at more and keep people safe. Because what they do is they give people the tools necessary to know, hey, this person might be doing drugs, or this person might be selling drugs, and they inform you, which is the biggest asset, in my opinion, about the DEA, is that they really give people information that someone might not really have. If for example, me, I was in a private school for a long time, for my whole life, and I was sheltered, so I didn't know what a meth dealer might look like, or a heroin dealer might look like. And so when you get information like that, it just helps keep people safe, which is, again, their ultimate goal. I don't think that they want to put people in prison and they want to hurt people. It's part of the game. It happens. And if you don't want to be involved in that, like AP was saying, you don't be a drug dealer, which is all that they're really after. They're not looking for someone, like he said a great quote, if you're smoking a marijuana cigarette in your house, the DEA is not going to worry about you and shut you down. They're more worried about the Pablo Escobars, the people who are selling that. And really, I think it all has to do with taxes. They're evading their taxes, and they're probably not being fair, and that's all that they can do. But again, it's a very complicated topic, and one episode, I would love to do more. One episode doesn't encompass everything, and of course I want to get the other side of it as well, but I thought it would just be interesting to get the topic from someone who's so embedded into it, who doesn't really have a channel to voice his opinions maybe all the time, because like I said, he's getting a paycheck from from the government who we criticize. But again, I want to say thank you so much to AP, because he did a fantastic job, and he's really such a wonderful guy, and I know he has a really, really busy schedule, so for him to take that time to sit down with me, I really appreciate it. And again, I want to give a shout out to AJ, because she's the one behind all this that no one sees, so I want to give her the shout out, because she's the one who also made all this happen. So thank you guys again, and if you guys have any questions, comments, or want me to do something, I have a few interviews in the works, so I don't want to tease any one of them just yet, because I'm not sure which one I want to drop, but expect it to come soon. So again, let me know what you guys want, and I hope you find your passion, pursue it, and peace.
And you chuck it on your father, you chuck it on your brother, and you chuck it on your sister, you chuck it on that one, and you chuck it on me. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Nobody now give you no break. Police now give you no break. That old soldier man I give you no break. Not even your iron now give you no breaks. Hey, bad boys, what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, or what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Why did you have to act so mean? Don't you know you're a human being? Born of a mother with the love of a father. Reflection comes and reflection goes. I know sometimes you wanna let go. Hey, I know sometimes